Welcome to the Atlanta Men's Workshop speaker and workshop recordings. Atlanta Men's Workshop is held every spring and fall at the Rock Eagle 4-H campus in Eatonton, Georgia. That's just about an hour east of Atlanta, Georgia. Please visit our website at atlantamensworkshop.com or see the link below to find dates and details to join us. Partial scholarships are available to those in need. We hope you enjoy this presentation, and we hope you will come join us at the Rock. Until then, we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right. So for those of you that were here in March, we did our first ever legacy meeting. And the whole purpose behind the legacy meeting was to hear from guys that had, I think at the time, it was 25 years or longer in sobriety, and the guys that had been hanging around the workshop particularly. And that experience, strength, and hope is invaluable. But a lot of times, for particularly newcomers that are coming in with, less than a year, less than a couple of months, less than a week, it's hard to relate with somebody that's got 25, 30 years in sobriety. It's not that the experience isn't important. It is. It's invaluable. But it oftentimes is easier to relate to somebody that's either younger in recovery, younger by age, or just started in the program younger. So what you all have up here is guys that either started in the program young, so my sobriety date's 2002, which meant I started roughly around 34, which relatively speaking, for some of us that's fairly young starting off, right? And we have guys that are younger. But the whole purpose is to hear how you get and stay sober, not only young in life, but young in sobriety. And maybe how the workshop, as well as others, because we've got a bunch of fantastic workshops in the region, but some of the other things that they're doing to get and stay sober, right? One day at a time. So, without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to these guys, and you guys can start wherever you like. Why don't you guys open it up for, 5 or 10 minutes apiece, and then we can open it up for questions. And I'll hand the mic out to these guys. So, Mike, you want to start?
My name is Mike, and I'm an alcoholic. I was figuring, Chris, that we would do like a horse and bottle thing, rock, scissors, paper. But since I am first, young people's recovery. I kind of wondering why I got selected to be on this panel, but that's okay. I'm here, and I'm asked to serve. My sobriety date is September 21st, 1998. But I still do remember being new in the program. I've gone through 2 treatment centers, one when I was in the military, and basically what that was a detox and an information gathering session that lasted 28 days, where I learned how to become compliant toward recovery and learned how to avoid how to be identified by the authorities, okay, and figured out a way to keep drinking and not stick out like a sore thumb. So I gathered a lot of information there, and life went on. The disease progressed. And it's kind of scary because in the first treatment center, they told me that I had a incurable, progressive, potentially fatal disease. And with that information, I went out and discovered that was going on. I found out that I couldn't stop drinking. I wanted to. Some of that information that I got that first go around was pretty good. But I still didn't think that I had an alcohol problem. That was one of the things that was pretty easy to see, because if I got as bad as any of y'all, I would probably see about that problem. maybe take some of those suggestions that they provided to me in that first treatment center. So life went on. My disease progressed. I discovered some other chemicals that I liked pretty well. And now that I'm out of the military and a civilian, I don't have the sword of a urinalysis test on a regular basis over my head. So I discovered and found out that some of those chemicals that now I could use without impunity, I like really well, but that still didn't change the problem that I had, which is addiction. It got worse. And it got so bad that I needed to, I actually got identified in the civilian world as somebody that had a problem with drugs and alcohol. And they asked me to go to my second treatment center. So in this one, I'm kind of afraid because all of those things that you all had taught me about, or if you didn't know, since you got in here, you found out about, I started finding out about, and they started becoming real personal to me. So I went through that second treatment center, and I did complete that, if you can call surviving, completing it. And it was okay for a minute, because even though I had a personal understanding of these things that we talk about, or characteristics of this disease called alcoholism, I still wasn't as bad as that guy who lit himself on fire drinking 151. I didn't have multiple DUIs. I didn't have any DUIs. I had no jail time from a result of drinking. So it really wasn't that I didn't have DUIs, it's just that I didn't get caught. It's not that I had prison time. I was able to, because of crimes I committed, is because I was able to get it away from being identified and arrested. So about that time, after that second treatment center, those kind of things that I thought were the not yets, a number of them had happened to me. It was real clear to me that I did have a progressive and really scary and potentially fatal disease. When you consume certain substances and you pass out as a result of having too much of it at one time, that's a pretty good indication that I didn't have control over it and that I might have a problem with it. So I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'd heard about that there's a solution for what I got, and I gave up and I came to the stepping stones of Northern Virginia of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this was an all-male group. They didn't play around with recovery. Matter of fact, some of the people refer to them to this day as step Nazis. And I started getting well. And as I was just sharing with a couple of people right before the meeting, the format of those meetings was that however many people showed up, they had an opportunity, they were given an opportunity to share. So for the first couple of days, when they pointed to me and asked me, did I want to share, I said no. So after going every day for about 3 days, all right, I started to feel a little bit more comfortable there. And when they pointed at me, I raised my hand and I started to emote. And I started to tell them about where I was at. And probably about it wasn't too long. The guy who was a facilitator, leader of the meeting, stopped the meeting. He stopped me from sharing. And he said that you can't share here until we tell you you can share here. And the reason that you need to be quiet is because what we talk about here is stopping drinking and staying stopped for drinking. And at 72 hours, 3 days, you don't know anything about that. And I had steam coming out of my ears. How dare him tell me, that I can't share. They told me in treatment that I need to talk about where I'm at. I need to emote and tell you about how I feel. And these guys, that I looked around and you think you guys are a motley crew. They were some of them were intimidating, okay? And even though the thinking and the desire in my mind was to whip that guy's ass and tell him he can't tell me how to talk, when to share, and do whatever, the reality of the situation was that I wasn't probably going to get out of that room without a thorough thumping. So I sat down and I was quiet, and I developed a huge resentment toward that group. And I got a big book And I started reading it, and my purpose of reading that book on a daily basis was to be able to find out how to catch you and defeat you in rebuttal sharing. So if you would share something, I had enough information to rebut what you were talking about, and I would come out on top. And they still didn't let me share in that meeting. But one of the things that they did do is because they knew about this disease, okay? And the more I got into that book, the more I found out that they knew what they were talking about. They had the solution for the thing that was killing me. Early on, they used to tell me, you're right where you need to be, son, and I hated that because I was at the bottom of the barrel. I didn't even have a bottle, I didn't have a pot to pee in, and I had nothing. And they were sitting there talking about prison terms, losing things, physical problems, and they were laughing and they were happy. They were really happy, and I couldn't figure that out. And that was early in recovery. But I stuck around those guys because they wrapped their arms around me. After we said the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting, they came and they physically grabbed me and says, come with us to coffee. Get in the damn car is basically what they said. And we started they allowed me to have meetings after the meetings with them. And I started to really understand and learn not only what was in the book, in that manual, but how to apply it in my life. And that not only did I have hope, but I had a blueprint. I had a plan. As a newcomer, that first year, with the exception of, say, like the first 90 days, it was a piece of cake. I hear people say, the first year is so hard. It was terrible. I struggled so. And what I tell them is, it's not that the program is hard and you struggled. What happened is that you struggled against the program. My resistance and being mouth almighty and being able to read and understand and comprehend was a barrier to me, because what's going on in this program, what has happened to me, is that it was not about how smart I was or how much I knew or how well I could recite and quote the steps. It was I living them or not? Did I have a sponsor? Okay. Did I call that sponsor? And did I talk to him? Did I emote to him and tell him my secrets and ask him how he did this thing and who was his sponsor and what kind of people did he hang out with? I did that. Okay. And I began to receive the psychic change that they're talking about at various levels and times and intensities. But by following this program, first of all, by not drinking, okay, following this program, following the people that are successful in this program, I started to change. Like I said, my sobriety date is 1998, but an interesting thing has happened to me. I have an opportunity to travel on my job, and I've gone all over the place in the United States, and I've gone to meetings all over the place in the United States. And one of the things that has not changed in these 28 years is all the way back in 1998. Those same 12 steps that were up there on the wall when I first couldn't even hardly remember, one or two of them. All 12 of them are still the same. And all 12 of them practice as a way of life. And this program continues not only to change me, but it changes you all. As I look out here in the audience and I say, you know what? I hope that I see some of these same people again at Future Rocks. And I bet you, if they're diligent in applying this program and they're willing to go to any lengths to get this sobriety thing that we talk about, that they will change. You all will change too. So, in a nutshell, there is a solution. I believe it's chapter 4 is called it. There is a solution in the big book. The following chapter lists how it works. Chapter after that is in the action. And all these things, taken to the best of my ability, consistently, with not drinking, has changed my life. It's changed how I feel. It's changed how I think. It's changed how I react to those things called life on life's terms. which sometimes today still sucks, but it's not unbearable. And I got a God that hits the reset button just about every day and gives me another opportunity to try this again. Because I'm not perfect. I am not perfect. I'm far from it. I still got some one or two character defects. But I have a way today that I had just like when I was new, that if I'm willing, it'll change me and a lot of the things in my life. So I probably yacked a whole lot, and I don't know if you got anything out of that, but I'm going to tell you what they told me. Is don't take a drink or a drug today. See if you can come back tomorrow, and we'll talk about it then. Thanks.
Bobby, addict and alcoholic. Sobriety date's July 7th of 07. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm nervous being up here. I don't like being in front of people with a microphone and lights, and you're going to be hard pressed to get 10 minutes out of me. I'll tell you that. So anyway, July 7th of 07, I was 24 when I got here. My drinking and using career was 8 years long. It took me 8 years to hit a bottom sufficient to bring about recovery. And what happened is, on that morning, I woke up and my girlfriend proceeded to tell me what happened the previous night, another blackout. And basically her message to me was I can't control you when you drink. And that hit me really, really deep, because I told my mother the same thing when I was 15. So I knew exactly how she felt, and I knew from my experience that the only way for me to not do that is to not drink, because from the very beginning, I could not control how much I drank. It was always too much. I drank too much, I smoked too much, I took too many pills. I just couldn't control anything. And I remember calling my mom that morning and telling her, I said, I can't do this anymore. And she said, well, what was told to me is basically, you need to admit you have the problem, what you're doing, and pray to your higher power and ask him to relieve you of the obsession to drink. And I did that with tears running down my face. I still remember that feeling. I prayed that prayer like I absolutely meant it. And, I made a decision that I wasn't going to drink. And I wanted to get this job at a factory, right? So I needed to clean out my system because I've been doing all this dope. And I was like, I know they're going to drug test me. I'm going to go ask my uncle if I can clean his shop, do something, busy work, till I can pass a drug test. And I was working there for like 3 weeks, and I remember I was such a dry drunk. Everyone was pissing me off. They're doing all this stuff to me, and I'm just like retaliating, and I'm yelling and screaming at everybody. And I'm telling my mom about it, and she said, well, I don't know if you know this, but your uncle has been clean from cocaine for like 14 years. Maybe you should ask him to go to one of his meetings. And I'm like, I'm not that bad off. I never had a problem with cocaine. And then I remember like the next day, something happened and it just sent me over the edge. And after work, I asked him, I said, hey man, you think I could go to that clubhouse thing you go to? And he was like, sure. The first meeting I went to, what we did first is we went out to eat before the meeting. And it was him and a couple of his friends. They all had multiple years of sobriety, and they were acting like teenagers. Just joking around, having a good time, laughing, making fun of themselves. I'm like, damn, that's what I want. That's what I've always wanted. That's why I went to drugs and alcohol. I never liked who I was before. I always had this voice inside my head telling me shit. And I wanted what they had. I went to a few meetings. They said, you got to get a sponsor. And I'm like, I don't know who to ask. I'm not that guy that just does stuff, And I was talking to this one other guy that when I came in CA, because I went to CA which is AA, but they talk about drugs. There weren't many young people then. There was like 3 guys my age. And one of them, I thought he was my age. He was actually like 10 years older. He just looked really young. But about 3 weeks in, he was like, you want me to be your sponsor? And I said, yes, thank God. I don't have to ask a guy. And he took me through the steps, and it changed me. It gave me something that I was looking for in drugs and alcohol. And that was good for a couple of years. I remember about 3 years in, maybe 4 years, I took a break. I had taken someone's inventory and found them to be a hypocrite. And, people kind of looked up to this person, and I'm like, I don't need this crap, So I just quit going to meetings. I do not recommend that. Don't do that. Just go to different meetings, find different people. Don't just stop. I didn't drink or drug. But over time, over those 2 years I didn't go, I reverted back to addict behavior. Doing things I wasn't supposed to do, lying about it, just not living the life that I was supposed to be living. Until one day it became enough. I was like, something's got to change. And I said, I know what I'll do. I'll just go back to meetings. I showed up on a Tuesday early at Log Cabin Group because I always go everywhere early. And I pull up, and, within a couple minutes, Lauren pulls up. We had a meeting before the meeting, and he gave me some information I needed to get that night. And, since that night, I've decided that I need to go to meetings. I cannot not take my medicine. Or I think I said that right. Anyway, and then I kind of did the same thing with the Rock. I think it was about a year in, I started coming to the Rock. I went to like 2 or 3 in a row. And then I thought about it because it was always selling out. The Rock's always sold out, right? And there was always like a waiting list, and people didn't get in. And along the lines, I started thinking, I'm taking someone's bed. I should stay home so that someone else can come, right? So when I'd come back to the meetings again, I made a decision. I said, no, Rock Eagle's going to be something I do because I'm the guy that needs the bed. That the reason I quit coming and the reason I quit going to meetings for a little bit is because I listened to that voice inside my head. That voice has always led me wrong. And I always hear what I need to hear right here. Several years ago, I started getting a little more involved. I like doing service work. I like to chair meetings. I like to be of service. I don't really like to be in the spotlight like right now. I like to just serve behind the scenes. So I would come early and I would help them go set out the ashtrays, put the posters up on the door. And then, I don't know, a couple years ago, I started setting up the stage, because someone has to do it. I'm like, I get here early, why not? And before a couple years, I get asked to be on the committee. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I'm a part of. The first time I was called up on this stage, I froze like a deer in headlights because I was supposed to read the steps, and I was so nervous, I sounded about like this. But I knew from the first Rock that I wanted to be on this stage. At some point, I'm like, how do I get up there? So I'll tell you how I got up here. I showed up. I helped out. I just did what the people before me did, just like drinking and drugging. I didn't know how to drink and drug. Someone had to show me that shit. So when I come in here and I decide what I want, I say, this guy's got what I want, I have to do what he did. Sometimes he's going to give me advice I don't want to hear. But that's his experience. And from my experience, I can tell you, if I do the same thing someone else did, I'm likely to get the same result. So I guess I'll have to say it just so Bill might hear it, that I said it. My sponsor has a 6-ingredient recipe to getting and staying sober. The first thing is go to meetings. Second, get a sponsor. Third, work the steps. Learn to pray, work with others, and then he won't give me credit for it, but I made him learn how to have fun in recovery. Because I did not get sober to be bored. That was a struggle when I was about 3 weeks sober. I didn't know how to have fun. I asked my girlfriend, I said, can I just get a 6-pack? I'll drink 3, you drink 3. And she reamed me a new one, man. And I was like, I gotta figure out how to have fun. I have no idea, because all I knew how to do was drink and then follow the alcohol, you know? So I think I'm probably rambling now. I can't say it enough. This program's given me everything that I was promised and denied. So thanks.
I'll just take that one. Tyler Vance, alcoholic. Bobby, 3 beers sounds miserable. That does not sound fun at all. So I got sober when I was 22. That was July 13th of 2016. I'm 31 now. I got sober in a college town. So a little bit like a background. So I thought I was really good at drinking because I could outdrink my friends. I could throw up more discreetly. By the end, like I'd black out, but like I wouldn't do embarrassing stuff for the most part, or at least more out of character embarrassing stuff. And I had to come to terms like, man, I'm really bad at drinking. Like that's why I'm having to get sober. So I was a late bloomer. I started when I was 17 or 16. I was a pothead first. And kind of when I got high for the first time, I was like, man, I want to feel like this 24/7. And I kind of pursued that for a while. And with pot, you can kind of somewhat function and be high 24/7. Like, not a better driver, but I'm a better driver high when I was drinking. And anyways, I go off to college, and this is like before all the vape pens they got now, or the gummies, or you can just go to a store now and I don't know what you can get at stores, but like if you're gonna get high, like it's gonna smell, and people are gonna know, and you can't really do that on a dorm. Like you'll get arrested, and it turns out you can get arrested drinking too, but it's a little bit more difficult. I still managed to do it, but I just started drinking because I can do this, and I took that same mindset. Like I want to be high 24/7. I want to be drunk 24/7, or at least as much as I can. And so, living that way, you kind of hit bottom pretty quick. And at the end, man, I'm just like living in an apartment, like working at Subway, going on like drinking every day, and like going on a bender when I get a couple days off, and then like being too sick to drink, and then going back to Subway, and then just cycle, just repeat and repeat and repeat. And I'm like desperately trying to figure out a way how I can be a functioning alcoholic. And like once I could figure that out, like I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be like on the fast track to the White House. And I just couldn't do it. Like just nothing I was trying was working. And so eventually it got to the point where I'm getting arrested again, and I get this like white light experience of I can know in my core, like if I want to be happy, I can't drink, which is a total 180 of my life philosophy up until that point. And man, like I felt hope for like the first time in years, because like I'm like in denial, like, oh, I can make this work. I'm telling myself it's like possible. And anyways, that happens, and like, well, now what? Like I had hope. Like I didn't even know if it was possible for me not to drink. And I mean, I was fighting it for so long because, man, I'm 21, I'm 22, I'm 18. Like I had barely been drinking legally. How can I quit now? But man, like I was dying inside. Like I'd wake up just obsessed with alcohol. Like when can I start drinking today? And if I could, I started drinking in the morning. I started drinking first thing. If I still had some left over, which happens sometimes. I mean, I either pass out or run out. That's how I would stop back then. Anyways, I had that experience, and I have no clue what to do to get sober. Somehow God planted on like two like bright ideas for me. It was one was to be honest no matter what. Like just tell the truth, period. Like if someone asks you like, hey, you have a drinking problem? Just say yes. Or just tell people, hey, I can't drink. Or tell other people, like, hey, I'm struggling with, freaking out about my job at Subway. They just fired everyone. Maybe I'm next. Which, that Subway was a shit house. But anyways, the other bright idea I had was I needed people. Like, by the end, man, like, my drinking just wasn't cool anymore. Like, you can't show up to the pregame already drunk. Or you have to, like, be awake to, like, get the text to get invited, like, to respond to the invitation to the pregame. And so, like, I was just drinking and I just didn't want people to see my alcoholism and then tell me you're an alcoholic, you need to quit. Because I just didn't want, I was so, like, that would just shatter my denial that I was really trying to maintain. And so I was isolated by the end. So I knew I needed people. And there's a UGA, there's a sober group of students. I went there. They said, you should check this AA thing out. And I went, there's a young people's group in Athens. And I went there. And it sucked. Like, it didn't suck. It sucked for me, I should say. Because I'm going there, and there's all these people my age that aren't drinking, and they drink like me, so that's kind of hopeful. But they're happy, and they all seem confident, and they're all showered. And like, man, I just didn't fit in. Like, here I am, my skin is crawling, and these guys seem to be loving life, not drinking, and they all know each other, and how do I talk? How do I just stand here silently? Like, do I, like, shake their hand goodbye? Do I hug them goodbye? Do I just obsessing about all this, like, micro crap? And so, I would leave those meetings and I would want to drink. And I had this sponsor, and he laughed at me all the time, which was really good for me. And he just told me, like, try one new meeting a week. Because I balked to the 90-90. Like, oh, I don't need 90-90. That's excessive. He said, just go to one new meeting a week. And I did, and I went to these meetings with a bunch of old timers. And they're like, I wasn't, like, caught up on, like, what they think. Like, I don't care if an 80-year-old lady thinks I'm attractive. I don't really care if they don't invite me to eat at, like, Denny's after the meeting. So I could, like, sit and, like, listen to their message and not be obsessed on what people think. And I could start, like, hearing some of this AA solution. And that's where I got my first service position. I made coffee. I grew up in AA. Like, I had no conception on how to live. Like, I didn't know how to make coffee. Like, I know I used, like, a Keurig machine. I thought just a pot of coffee had a big K-cup. And they taught me how to, like, use a filter. They taught me how to, just do this stuff. They taught me how to clean up after the coffee. But they taught me a lot more. I knew I had to be honest, but they taught me what being honest meant. It meant that if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I show up and I be there. They taught me how to, like, not be so selfish. Like, I'll be honest, I did not want to do this, but I was asked. So yeah, I'll do it. Like, I'm happy to be of service to AA. And so they taught me on just how to be an adult and a man. And after I hung out with those old guys for a while, I was able to go to the young people's group. And I still wasn't tight with them, but I was comfortable in my own skin. And I could be there and be a part of and then get to know them and get to be known and, like, be okay with being known. Man, that was great. Like, I grew. And it taught me later, like, how to be in a relationship, because I learned all these principles on, like, how to, like, be honest while single, and how to be honest with, like, a woman that, like, I'm attracted to, and how to be, like, faithful and just be of service to her, not selfishly, but I'm selfish, so that's hard. And so, man, like, that was great. And then I come here, and I'm like, at this point, I'm like a year and a half sober, and I'm like, I'm digging it. And I come here, and nobody knows me. People in my home group liked me because I'm, like, the young guy by, like, a couple decades. I stick out. They're kind to me, and no one knows me. No one's like, like, super, like, oh, Tyler, you're so special for getting sober young. This is great. No one's pumping that ego up. And man, I just, like, my skin's crawling again. And I try, like, I do a little bit better than I did my first go around to the young people's group. I try to, like, make connections. I did all right, but I left, man, feeling like crap. Like, man, I'm not coming back. And then I got a new sponsor, and he had a list of, like, suggestions, and one of them was go to Rock Eagle. I was like, Randy, I already did that. Like, I don't really want to do it. I'm willing to. I don't really want to do it again, but I'm willing to. And he said, well, just go to the next one you can make. was like, Randy, that's the one coming up next month. I can technically make that. I'm free that weekend. And the cool thing was, man, I was like sponsoring some guys, and I mentioned it to them, like, hey, I'm doing this. And they were like, oh, that sounds awesome. Like, let's do it. So they all jumped to the opportunity to come. And, man, I had a totally different experience. I had been sponsoring for the past year. I had changed inwardly some. I also, was willing to be of service here. I'd just been around doing what I did at that first home group. Hey, how can I help? What do you need help with? What can I do? Oh, you guys need someone to make coffee? Yeah, I'll make the coffee. Which is also, that was kind of selfish because I like strong coffee, and I can make it right, And you don't need one cup, man. That's all you need for the whole weekend. Right, I started being of service, and that change I felt more a part of, and something happened where, man, I just like fell in love with this place. And it was great because I learned how to be more comfortable in my own skin. I got comfortable in my skin in Athens AA because everyone knew me, and I felt established. And then I came here, and I felt more comfortable here after people started to know me. And I just moved to a new city after 9 years of sobriety, and no one knows me. But I'm comfortable right off the rip because I know myself now, and I've been living this way of life where I'm living as a man with God and of integrity, which you guys taught me how to do. And so, man, like I said, I grew up in AA. I had no clue about how to be a man, an adult, how to even function. And you guys taught me how to do that. And man, so I'll end with this. People would come up to me and they'd say, man, you're so lucky to get sober when you're young. And I would think, fuck you. You got to drink for 20 more years than me. And I was happily sober. I was glad that I was sober, but I was still envious of their longer drinking career. And man, today I can say I am so glad I'm an alcoholic. Because it led me to you guys. You guys led me to God, to a life that didn't make sense to me. And that's been so good for me and so rewarding. So, thanks, Chad, for asking me to help out with this, and I'll pass with that.
It works. Thought we might run out of time before you get to me, but they didn't. So I guess. My sobriety date is February 4th, 1994, and one day at a time. I haven't seen it necessary to pick up a drink, and I was. Oh, my name's Dave. I'm alcoholic, and proud member of alumni group in Athens, Georgia, and my sobriety date is February 4th, 1994. And I was 19 years old when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I grew up in a real unmanageable home, real influential family in New York, usually not influential in a good way. They were drugs and weapons dealers, and they hauled drugs and weapons around the state and the country. And kind of an unmanageable home, but drinking in my home was just that's just what you did, I remember taking my first drink. I was 10 years old, and my dad liked Southern Comfort and Jack Daniels, and he used Southern Comfort in the morning for an eye opener and Jack Daniels for the rest of the day, and so I figured I'd take a shot of that Jack Daniels one day, and until the day I got sober, that was my drug of choice, that bottle of Jack Daniels. And what happened that day was I drank that and took a couple shots or whatever, and I don't remember much else except I fell down the stairs and I puked, and they put me in the bed, and I woke up the next day, and that was the most wonderful experience of my life. And from that day forward, I every chance I got, I drank Jack Daniels. And then I was 15 or whatever, and I found some of this white stuff that was that my dad had over there, and I took some of that. And then I figured out that I could drink Jack Daniels and stay up for days if I did enough of that white stuff. So that's what I did. I snorted a whole lot of that white stuff and stayed up for days and days and days. And but I really loved to drink. And so I was in and out of juvie and in and out of jails. And, the last year before I got sober, I went to 16 detoxes. And every time I got out of that detox, I didn't live far from the detox. And I would walk home. It was about 3 blocks from the detox. And problem was, I had to walk by a liquor store to get home. And I would leave that detox, and if you gave me a lie detector test when I left that detox, I would tell you I'm not going to drink. But I never made it past that liquor store. Not one time. And I would go in there, I would trick myself. I would go in there and I would say, I'm going to get a couple travel bottles of Jack Daniels. And I would get them a couple travel bottles of Jack Daniels. And I would walk down the street a little bit and I would get them done. And I would say, well, let me go back and get a 5th to bring home with me. And that's just kind of the way it went. And but I would call that girl there. I had this girlfriend, and lovely girl. I would call her up and I would say, Lynn, I say, I'll be home soon. And I would say, I'm not going to drink, and we're going to go out and have a great dinner tonight. And we're going to have a real romantic evening. And we never had a romantic evening. Not one time. So the last time I got out of that detox, I got drunk that night, like I always did. Went into a blackout. I woke up the next morning, I look at this girl, and she's got 2 black and blue eyes and a bloody nose. And I said, who did that to you? And I had my gun in my hand. And I said, I'm going to shoot whoever did that to you. And she looked at me and said, you bastard, shoot yourself. Because I'm the one that did that to her and didn't remember it. And I still almost cry when I say that today. Because no woman should ever be treated like that. I didn't mean to treat that woman that way. I really wanted to treat that woman with love and respect is what I really wanted to do. But in my addiction, I didn't treat anybody with love and respect. That's just what the gig was, So what happened was my family had quite a bit of money, and I didn't have to drive. I had a driver, and so I just called up a driver, and he just drive me. Well, I don't know, I got drunk and decided to put a bunch of drugs in my car and bring it to Syracuse, New York. Because there was a big party going on in Syracuse, New York, and I wanted to make sure they had enough. And so I got on the New York State Thruway for a 2.5-hour drive to Syracuse, New York, and from Schenectady, New York, Albany, New York. And I got pulled over on the New York State Thruway, and I don't remember that pullover still to this day, although God presented me to meet the man that pulled me over that day years later. We met on accident, most people would say, but I say it was God putting him in my life. So he pulled me over, and I had a .4 alcohol level. And when he opened that door, he said it was the scariest traffic stop he ever had. New York State Thruway is kind of like 85, 65 miles an hour. And he opened that door, and I rolled out of the car onto the damn pavement. And so he brought me over there to jail, and Mr. Feinberg, the lawyer, showed up over there at the jailhouse and with bail money. He bailed me out once again. We went over to Mr. Feinberg's office, and he said, son, your daddy left me a bunch of money to help you get out of this situation. He said, but if you don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous, this was February 4th, 1994. He said, if you don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm giving all this money back to your daddy, and I ain't going to defend you. And I was facing 10 to 15 years in prison. And so he brought me to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I walked in them doors, and I met a man in there. Bill Shell was my sponsor for 19 years. Actually, he tried making it to the day, but I gave him permission February 3rd at 8 p.m. that it was okay to go home to a father that loved him. And his wife told me that, because he was like a dad to me, his wife told me that if I didn't tell him it was okay to go home to a father that loves him, then he was going to just stay in pain till February 4th. So it was February 3rd, the day before my anniversary. He went home to a father that loved him. And the beautiful part about that is that day, me and my new sponsor, who was his sponsor, were holding hands at his bedside when I said, Bill, it's okay to go home to a father that loves you. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever experienced in my life. And he told everybody for years, though. He said he used to put his hand on my shoulder when we met new folks. He would say, "This is the angriest guy that ever walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous." And he told hundreds of people that. We went to a lot of conventions and a lot of workshops. And he told everybody he met that I was the angriest man that walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was still angry in Alcoholics Anonymous, even though I had a sponsor. I wish I could tell you that I wasn't. But for about 8 years, I kept praying and I kept praying, and I kept doing this deal. The other thing was, when I called Bill, I was 6 months sober, and I said, Bill, I'm out of money. I come into AA, I had some cash, in the briefcase, but I said, Bill, I run out of money. What do I do? And he said, what do you mean, what do? You get a damn job. I never had a job before I come in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, well, where do I get one of them? And he says, meet me over here it was at Bristol Myers Squibbs. I know a guy that does some work over there. I said, okay. So we walked over there, and he introduced me to this guy that he knew that had a cleaning business. And I said, you want me to clean toilets? He says, that's all your brain can handle. And I become a janitor over there at Bristol Myers Squibb. And I said, well, what do I do now? He says, just what you do. You go to work when they tell you to go to work. You come home when they tell you to come home, and don't ask any questions in between as long as it's not illegal. And I needed every direction when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous on what to do next. So I was still pretty upset. I was pretty angry for 8 years or so, and I kept praying, and I kept doing these steps, and I kept working with other guys, and I had these angry bouts, and I just questioned God on everything, and it was just crazy. And they say sometimes God comes quickly, and sometimes God comes slowly, and sometimes He's got to really get your attention. And my wife was pregnant with our first child, and he was supposed to have hydrocephalus, and they said they were going to have to go in and put tubes in his brain and do all this stuff, and so we went. I said, well, we were living in Georgia at the time. I've been to a few different states, but we were living in Georgia at that time. And I said, so we were in Athens, and we ended up going to Dr. Hudgens in Atlanta. He was the Mac Daddy of hydrocephalus, and taught everybody how to do it. And I said, well, if my son's got to have this done, I want him to be where the best is. And so it kept going on, and we were kind of going nuts through that whole thing, and not really believing that God was in charge. So the day before at 6 p.m., they said your son's got full-blown hydrocephalus. We're going to take him from his mama, bring him right into the ICU, put shunts in him, and we'll see what happens from there. He could be handicapped, whatever. And so they take him from my wife, and I see Dr. Hudgens in there. I'm at the glass, and they're scanning him, and Dr. Hudgens come out and said, I don't know what happened to that hydrocephalus, but it disappeared overnight. And I shook, and I fell to the ground, and I ain't questioned God since that day. And the anger disappeared. The anger went away. And I haven't been that angry man in Alcoholics Anonymous since that day. And, so I'm going to shut up in a minute because I think my time's about up. But the deal is that how I've stayed sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, real quick synopsis. I still go to meetings. I go to workshops. I go to conventions. My sponsor told me it was real important when I got sober to call 2-3 men in Alcoholics Anonymous every day. I've done that every day since I've been sober. People have asked me, well, what if you don't do that? I don't know. I've never tried not to do it. I've never tried not to do it. So if there's a guy in here tonight or this afternoon that doesn't have that one guy to call every day, my number is 678-421-8022. And when I speak, I like to tell people that. Because if you feel like you don't have someone to call this evening or tomorrow or next Tuesday, I will answer my phone. Now, I'm getting older, so I go to bed by 10 o'clock. But if God wants me to hear that phone ring, I'm going to hear it ring. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks. Can you give them your social security number too? If you guys are curious. Chris, what time do we have till? About 4? 4:30. Okay. All right. So I got about 38 minutes. My name's Chad. I'm an alcoholic. Joke's on you guys. We said young in recovery, and you got us. So I think, as you've heard from all of us sitting up here, got fortunate enough to get sober at a really early age. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous at 19 years old. I'm clearly not 19 years old anymore. Been sober 19 years, so almost half my life. I've spent more time sober than I did drinking, and almost more time sober than I was alive before I found AA. For the sake of time, I'll keep it brief as far as my drinking history. I very well remember my first drink. I very well remember my last one. Remember quite a few in between, but not a lot. And I remember why I took that first drink, and I remember why I don't remember a whole lot in between. At a really early age, I felt different. I remember coming into kindergarten and feeling different. I remember walking into my first kindergarten class, and I swore that everybody else had a manual that I did not. I had my first panic attack, I think, when I was in kindergarten, on that first day of kindergarten. And by the time I was in second and third grade, I started noticing that I was different than other kids. I've always had a mind that just races, just always trying to make sense of things, and had an interesting childhood that really fueled a lot of that. I had a mind that for most of my life told me, you're a stupid, no good piece of shit, you're never going to amount to anything, why even try? And so it makes perfect sense that when I found out alcohol, I was off to the races, because it was the only thing that would stop my mind from torturing me. I'm so grateful for alcohol and drugs. I don't know if you've heard many people say that from behind the podium, but thank God for drugs and alcohol. They kept me alive long enough to find Alcoholics Anonymous. They were my medication that helped me tolerate an intolerable brain. And then they turned against me. I know for certain, had I not found AA at 19 years old, I wouldn't be sitting up here. If I would have had one more week out there, I know I wouldn't be sitting up here. I know exactly what I was looking for. I know exactly what my game plan was. And I know exactly with 100% certainty that I was going to be off to the races with it, and I was going to die an alcoholic death. My last drink was after months of making promises. I swear I'm going to quit, like many of you. And on that very last one, I had a whole weekend of promises toward my parents. I'm done. And then before they even left, my dealer was sitting in the parking lot. And they were actually there just to square up with me. I owed them $10. Go figure. Fucking $10.
And if you're anything like me, you know exactly what happens next. I was off to the races again, and thankfully I scheduled a follow-up appointment with a drug and alcohol counselor that really saved my life. But I was adamant I needed to meet with somebody who was like me. I knew I needed to meet somebody who was an alcoholic drug addict. I needed to meet somebody who didn't just study somebody like me. I needed somebody who understood what it was like to be like me. And that guy Tim saved my life. About halfway into the therapy session, he says to me, "Chad, I think you might be an alcoholic. What do you think?" And I was like, no shit. About halfway through the session, I left and went to an AA meeting, and I haven't looked back since. So, what I'll say, because I think, important to talk about, not only how we get sober, but also how we stay sober. I think there's a lot of guys in here wondering how am I going to get sober? And I think there are maybe some guys in here wondering how I'm going to stay sober. And I've really learned over the years, those are two different art forms that maybe share some similarities. Getting sober was one thing. I needed to get a sponsor. I needed to call them every day. I needed to go to meetings nonstop. They said 90 and 90. I went to 270 and 90. It became my life. I just absolutely threw myself head first. They also told me, get involved in service work. When I got sober, they still had smoking meetings. I miss that. I don't smoke anymore. I still miss it. There's just something about it, just that like cloud in the air, But so I started cleaning ashtrays and cleaning coffee mugs and mopping the floor and cleaning up after meetings. They told me if you want to get and stay sober, throw yourself into the center of this thing. If you're really, really serious about it. And that's what I did, man. I started washing coffee mugs and ashtrays, and it was nasty. It was as nasty as it sounds, man. But through that, people started to see that I was really serious about this thing, and I got a sponsor who I very quickly told to fuck off, and then I got another sponsor, and I got really good at telling them to fuck off. We're not recording this, are we? We are. Great. Yeah. Can I get like a beatbox? Yeah. I will tell you, I got and fired a lot of sponsors. I got really good at that. I had 15 sponsors before the time I was 2.5 years sober. I was, it's like I knew the premise of getting a sponsor was they were going to tell you what to do, and so I would get them. I'd be like, "Hey, I really trust you. I want you to tell me what to do." And so you tell me what to do, I was going to fuck off, and I go get a new sponsor, And then finally at 2.5 years sober, I wanted to kill myself. And this is where the art form of staying sober really kicked in for me. I got a sponsor and I stuck with them, and I finally started to do what they told me to. I complied, and I don't comply well. I'm really good at rebellion. I loved rebelling, man. I love giving people the middle finger. There was a certain kind of freedom that came along with it, but finally at 2.5 years sober, I was finally truly beaten down from the disease of alcoholism that I wasn't even drinking and using anymore. I was beaten down by the mind of the alcoholic, and I wanted to die. So I got a sponsor, and I finally started to do what they told me to. So lucky number 16. And stuck with them for quite a while, man. And I took suggestions. I worked the steps again. I had stayed with one sponsor long enough. Pete Brown, actually, he's here at The Rock. Stuck with him long enough. I had somebody to tolerate me long enough that I got through. But 2.5 years sober, got the sponsor, did what they asked me to do, And, I've really slowed down giving people the middle finger. I've slowed down that trajectory of having a lot of sponsors. And that was really helpful for me, finally taking suggestions. But I'll tell you one thing, when it comes to the art form of staying sober, I think that's really important as well. Because I think, many of us have probably been through it. A lot of people in AA have been through it, that you just kind of go through these lulls where things just kind of plateau. You're going to meetings, you're doing the deal, maybe you're sponsoring guys, you're doing some service work, but you're not really digging in anymore. And I had about a 4-year plateau where, I was not drinking, but I wouldn't call me sober. I was sponsoring guys, and I thought I was doing the deal, but there was more. And so for me, at about 8 years sober, I came out here to the Rock and I knew I needed to grab a gear. I don't know what it was, man. I went home and I knew I needed to dig in. And there's a line in the 12 and 12, I think it's in the 12 steps, and I call it the biggest little word in the literature. It says if they go on growing. And that was a really, really important word for me. I have just continuously since that day kept my foot on the gas, and I keep digging in. And for anybody who knows me, knows that I'm not okay with just not drinking. I came here because I had a mind that tortured me as much as I came here because I was going to die. Both of those things were true. Both of those things were going to kill me, and so I needed to do the work, and I needed to keep doing the work, and I needed to keep digging in to figure out why I have a mind that tortures me. And I've been lucky enough now, at least for the last couple of years. I don't know when the shift happened. I don't know what my moment was. But my mind just started to settle down. It stopped torturing me as much, and I think a lot of it came from just continuing to study the literature, continuing to ask questions. That was one thing I did early on that I still continue to do early on. I think it's great to hang out with young people in recovery, but I didn't want to be a young person in recovery. I wanted to be an old timer. I wanted to stay sober the rest of my life. I wanted to stop dying. And so I spent a lot of time with people who had a lot of time. I hung out with old timers, man, and it wasn't cool, it didn't seem as fun, but I wanted to stop dying, and I wanted to stop having a mind that was hurting me so bad. And so I spent a bunch of time with a bunch of guys that seemed like they had it going on, man. And I'd ask them questions, and I'd talk about the struggles I was dealing with, and I was talking about having this torturous mind. And through a lot of that just constant repetition, the mind just finally started to settle down and ease up. So the art form of getting sober and staying sober, two different things, again, with some shared similarities. I still make coffee. I still, will walk up to the guy with the white chip and take him out to eat. I still, I just do the thankless work, the unseen work. I think that is so important to do that kind of work. I don't wash ashtrays anymore because we don't smoke in meetings, but still washing coffee mugs if I have to. But I'm also still doing that additional work of continuing to grab a gear, continuing to dig deep to figure out what's going on with me, because I want to be free. I want a mind that is at peace. But more than anything else, I want to be able to give that back to other guys, and that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, guys. It's the opportunity to give this stuff back and to give back what's been so freely given to me. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Let's give these guys another round of applause real quickly. Guys, don't leave yet. So we're gonna go around the room. For those of you that have been to a heavy hitters meeting, you know what I'm getting ready to tell you. For those of you that haven't, we're gonna go around the room and let you guys get a chance to ask questions. I'd like you guys to raise your hands. We'll give you guys a number. Please remember your number. It's not our job to remember your number, but we're gonna start from there. So we have 1. Who's next? 2. Who's next? 3.
I get a 3 to 3 to 3 to 3. Can I get a 3?
Who's next? 4, 5. Anybody else? All right, come on down. I can't see you up there. All right, 1, go.
Hey, my name's Garrett. I'm an alcoholic, and so I'm not as fortunate as y'all. I remember being in rehab, looking at guys that were in their 60s, and I was like, I don't want to be that guy, And today I'm not. I have 3 years sober, a little over 3 years sober.
Hey, can you hold the mic a little closer to you?
Sorry. Yeah, so I have a little over 3 years sober, and I am a single father with full custody. My kids are grown now, graduating and stuff, and the meetings out where I'm at, I'm in between Athens and Atlanta. I'm not in a college town, and so it's a lot of It's mainly old timers, which was amazing, is amazing, and I've learned so much. and still do. And they help hold me accountable. But the thing that I struggle with, and we've talked about, is like I have this problem. I don't have like friends or people closer to my age to like go to the park with, go do whatever. I don't know what fun or joy looks like on that spectrum. And then in our area, like how to keep, of course you'll see the revolving door of newcomers in and out, but like how do we, this next generation, how do we protect this, program, and, guys my age and younger, continue to grow that are maybe, 2 hours outside of Atlanta, Athens, these places where you got college towns, younger people, great sobriety, I guess maybe a little more opportunity. And so that's just like, and maybe my kids also graduating. I'm feeling a little lonely. So I'm just, maybe if y'all have any advice on that, if it makes sense.
I'll jump in on this one real quick. I'll say the expression, you create the fellowship you crave. I couldn't be more true. I look around the room, I see a lot of guys here from Gainesville, Florida. I won't say go Gators, I'll say go Dogs. But you create the fellowship you crave. When I started coming here, we didn't have a really strong young men's recovery community in Gainesville, and I think a lot of the guys, we started kind of bringing more and more guys up here, and then we ended up starting a meeting back in Gainesville, and now, this rock, we came up with 29 guys from Gainesville, man. And so I think creating the fellowship you crave is really important. That 12-step work is really important. You're fortunate enough, man, you're here. Bring that back, and when you come back, bring more guys with you. It's a great opportunity to get to know them. But just doing that 12-step work and creating the fellowship you crave.
Oh yeah, real quick. It's love what Chad had to say. When I was sober a couple years, back in the dating world, trying to snag a normie, and it's like, what do you do for fun? And it's, well, I do AA, and like, it's like, what? Didn't get second date, but I learned like I need to like have a life. Like AA is at the center of it. It gives me a life, but like I gotta get hobbies. I gotta like do stuff. AA makes it so easy for me to have a fellowship. But there's more world out there, and so I have friends that I play disc golf with. I had friends for a little bit that I played golf with, but I'm not a golfer. But just like live a life, find out what I like that's beyond like drinking, because that's all I did towards the end. Like I just drank, or I did stuff that I could be drunk for. And so that, and then I'll say this. I know it's not a fun suggestion, but like, there is infinite fellowship on Zoom. There are so many Zoom meetings that like I cannot tell my sponsor I can't go to a meeting. I'm in China, which I was in China, and I can still go to Zoom meetings. I could go to young people's Zoom meetings. And so while like it's not my ideal, I probably would rather take Chad's suggestion than do Zoom meetings. But it's there. There's opportunities there if I seek it.
I'm Lauren. I'm a real alcoholic and a real crackhead. And first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for being up there. I know some of you didn't want to be, but that thing's got the gain turned up really high. And I think most of you guys came in when you were like under 25 years old. I know I heard a couple of people say that they were like 18 or 19. If you had some advice that you could give to the people in the room right now who are under 30 and maybe even relatively new in this program, what would you tell them to help them get the kind of quality of sobriety that you have, and to help them to want to keep coming back? I'm not talking just about the rock. I'm talking about keep coming back to the meetings And this is a question for anyone. It doesn't have to be any particular one of you guys. But like I say, I heard some great stuff.
All right. So, I mean, stick your hand out to get it shook, you know, and build a fellowship around you. I mean, you know, I'll tell you something. The last little over 3 years of my life have probably been the worst as far as family goes. You know, my wife's been battling cancer for over 3 years, and the battle's never going to stop till the end, right? That's the ultimate thing, unless, you know, something really major comes along. But, you know, the deal is that without the people in my life, without the, you know, I always questioned my sponsor when I got sober when he said, I want you to call 2-3 guys a day. And I said, why the hell do I got to do this? And today, the deal is that I'm on automatic. I call 2-3 people a day, right? It's just, and there's days that have been very sad in my life in the last 3 years, right? We've gotten news we didn't want to get. We've got, you know, things have happened we didn't want to happen. And automatically I pick up a phone and I call somebody, right? If it wasn't for these guys, I'm not saying I would have picked a drink up, but I might have went insane, right? Or I might have, you know, questioned God more and said, well, why the hell are you doing this to me, you know? So for me, it's, you know, the only way I've stayed in Alcoholics Anonymous, as long as I haven't, I'm a true believer of it, is that I've never stopped doing service work from 2 weeks sober. I have always had a service position in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've made coffee since I've been 2 weeks sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I still make coffee at my home group at 31 years sober today. And you know, it's like, so we need to get involved in Alcoholics Anonymous in order to stay sober. And that's the only thing the only way I know to stay sober. So, that's what I would tell anybody that's new in recovery. If you really want this deal, you know, I mean, I'm not a guy that's afraid to tell a sponsee what he needs to do, but I think some people are today, you know. It's like stepping on toes or whatever. But it's like, it's fine if you don't want to stay sober the way I stayed sober, just find a different sponsor to do it with. And that's what I tell guys. I hate to say it. It's like, you know, I got a real busy life. I take care of my wife, been taking care of her for 3 years. I'm a caretaker. And I got a real busy life. And it's like, if you want to stay sober, I'm more than willing to go through these steps with you. And I'm more than willing to do that. But if you're not willing to do the work it takes to stay sober, then find another sponsor. That's all I got.
That was a good question, Lauren. And what popped into my mind is to not project into the future. Stay in the day. Don't get stuck back in the past. It's like, you know, like schlep rock, you know, oh, this stuff will never work. You know, AA is not for me. It's like, well, how do you know? You know, how do you know? Things opened up and started to make more sense to me. I began to feel more comfortable when I said, like, you know what? I'm going to go to this meeting. I'm going to stay for the whole meeting. You know, I'm going to keep my mind open. I'm not going to try to overthink things. And not to resist the program that's here to help me. For first 90 sober days, I had arguments and debates with just about anything or anybody in the program. And things really smoothed out and got a whole lot more palatable when I said, like, you know what? Que sera, sera. You know, I didn't drink today. I don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'll deal with that when I get to tomorrow. And for me, that helped to make things a whole lot easier to deal with today, staying in the day. So give yourself a break. Don't take yourself too seriously. Those are things that have helped me to be able to want to be here and stick around.
I forgot the question. Hold on. Let's see. Good evening. My name is Ted. I'm an addict alcoholic.
Ted.
I'm glad to be here, and I want to thank all you guys on the stage and everyone else that is here. I forgot my question, but dang it. It's like his question was something like my question, but he answered and he answered. Everybody answered already, but it's like I want to ask some more stuff, but I don't want to take up all the time. So I'm trying to think like something good. Like, all right, cool. Yeah.
All right, I'll go first. My name's Daniel. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Daniel.
So where I'm at right now, since day one sobriety, I moved into a sober living home, and I've been there, and I've ran through the steps twice, but I've been on the receiving end. I've been getting sponsored, and now I'm getting opportunities to leave the house, and I'm under a lot of pressure to start sponsoring people. And so my question is, even like I recognize that I'm very fearful of changing anything because it's working, but when do you cross over and take that change into the next step?
Bobby, addict alcoholic.
Hey, Bob.
To answer that, I would say when the opportunity presents itself. At meetings I go to, at the end, we raise our hand if we're willing to be a sponsor or available to be a sponsor. Sometimes I don't raise my hand because I've got a full workload. I don't want to shortchange a guy by raising my hand and not giving him the attention he needs. But I still get asked, hey, will you sponsor me? And, sometimes I say yes. Because the opportunity's there, I feel like in that moment, God sent that person to me. So why should I send them away? I wasn't looking for someone, but they presented themselves. I remember in the beginning, it was probably 10 years before I started sponsoring. I don't recommend that. Because honestly, when you start sponsoring, that's when the program changes for you. Everyone that has sponsored that I've talked to basically says the same thing. That's when it changes. Because you get to freely give away what was given to you, and that feels good. That's the drink and drug for me today, is helping another man. I love doing this. I was sitting here thinking about the earlier question, like about Lauren's question, how do you keep coming back? I make this important to me, and there's a question my sponsor says. He's like, well, how long do you have to go to meetings? And their answer is, until you want to. I want to go to meetings today. I want to get involved, and I want to help, and I just have to take the opportunities that were given. Sometimes it's not fun, man. Sometimes it's work. It's not always easy to help people, but I make myself available when the opportunity's there.
Hey, I guess my question was kind of centered around just change, like when you just, times in your life where, and I guess like in the beginning, just quitting drinking is a change that you're making, and it can seem, like I know for me, like it seemed very, there was a lot of fear on the other side of that decision of like, just my identity is so wrapped up in, alcohol. But after that, there was lots of other changes and lots of other, things that needed to go as well. And lots of other patterns of behavior or whatever, just like change, and it was always that way. It was always like, like standing at the cliff's edge, of change, and like, this is what I need to do. Like, I have the awareness, and I'm like, I want to put willingness to action, and like, I'm change on it, concrete. Like, I need to stop doing this, I need to start doing this. But it's like, still like that fear of just like, who am I gonna be? Like, I know, like in the 12 and 12, I know it talks about that in step 3 of just like, what will become of me? Will I even what will, almost like this nakedness of just changing the trajectory of travel of like, I'm really doing it. Not just talking about it, not just whatever, like, but really doing it, where it matters, where it's like just my life, and integrity, like no one's watching, like all that kind of stuff. And just, so I don't know really what the question was, but just a time in your life maybe where there was like, maybe it was a step or just something you were just needed to let go of, like an example that seemed impossible at the beginning, but maybe into it, you realized that, the fear wasn't all it was cracked out to be, I guess.
Yeah, so I feel like so much of recovery is like all it is just change. I think you could say the same about life. Like, nothing is permanent. Everything is impermanent. But I would say personally, just experienced a lot of evolution, through the step work process. And I'll share in the last 5 years, and this actually has become a big part of the reason why I think I've started to really kind of free up and have more peace. I've always been a very controlling person. I've been a very militant sponsor, a very controlling husband. Why are you guys laughing? Yeah. Y'all don't know me, okay? Yeah, it's the guys who are laughing are the ones who know me, because they're laughing, going, yeah, we know. But it's exhausting, and at the same time, I thought, if you would just do as I ask, I'll be okay. I'll be happy. And then enough people kept doing as I asked, and I still wasn't happy. And so I had to really bang my head against that wall enough times to finally be willing to surrender. And I'm still in the process of surrender. That's the thing. It's not a light switch. It's a dimmer switch. For some people, the light switch happens and the anger just stops. I had a few of those light switch moments, but most of my recovery has been very much a dimmer switch. And what I would say is I've gone through a lot of change. And as long as it's really grounded in recovery and really healthy evolution, I would say there's been a lot of peace and happiness on the other side of it. But it is really scary. I think in a lot of ways it feels like jumping off a cliff, and I feel like I'm going to die, and what'll be left of me, I'll be like the hole in the donut, and it turns out I just land on these like fluffy pillows, and it's a lot more chill and peaceful than it seems. So I would say change and evolution can be a really, really healthy and good thing. Not all change is, again, but especially when it's kind of guided by the recovery journey, I've found in my own life, in my own experience, that it has been really positive.
Hey everybody, I'm preaching and I'm a delivered alcoholic addict. This question is basically for each one of you guys. I have 8.5 months clean and sober. This is my first trip to the Rock. What would you guys say to someone like me? How would you convince me to come? How is it important being here, coming here to you guys in your recovery? And what would you say to someone like myself and these guys in here with under a year about this place?
I'm Tyler Vance, alcoholic. I flew down from New York to then come here on Thursday, to then stay up late printing name tags, to then be here for the weekend. That's not very convenient. And it used to be just an hour drive. And this is a whole ordeal. I had to fly my dog with me. and like give them like drugs to like chill out. And so, man, like it's important. This is a part of my sobriety. Like you stay sober for a while, life can just kind of go on like fast forward and just things happen. But man, I get a checkpoint every 6 months of being here where I am just forced to like stop and reflect and see Chad. I saw Chad recently, but typically I don't see Chad but twice a year and check in. How the past 6 months been? So it's keeping me engaged with my life, engaged with my program, my sobriety, and man, like I hear people that have been sober longer than I've been alive. I talk to guys that just have a different sponsor family, so they have a different experience with the steps. And so, man, like this is a vital part of my program that I don't miss. Like, I plan vacations around this. And my wife is now on board where she is okay planning vacations around this because, I'm a better husband because of it. And so, kind of like I said, I had my share, like I hated it the first time, but I was open-minded and willing to try it again and do things differently. And because of that, like it's just become a cornerstone for me. So yeah, that's my answer.
Bobby, addict and alcoholic. I'd like to say, hopefully, tomorrow morning, your question will be answered without words. I come down here for the feeling that I get. I love feeling good, and being here makes me feel good. And I always want to do more of that. A guy was sharing earlier about, not living in a town where there's a lot of meetings and a lot of people. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of opportunities to meet people, to network, to find people like you. We're all on this road together, and this is a great place to connect. I see people here that I don't get to see but twice a year. But we have relationships like that. I pick up a conversation where I left off 6 months ago with a guy. That's what I get to do here. So I just make it important to me. I don't know if I can explain it to you, but like I said, hopefully tomorrow morning your answer will be given.
Guys, if I can jump in here, because we are just about out of time. But to answer your question, but also a few others. So I started coming here in 2002. And just to give you a bit about me, and the only reason that this is relevant is it'll tell you some of the answers that you're looking at or that you're asking. But it's about unity, right? Or no, it's about service. No, it's not. It's about recovery, right? But all three of those things are found here in such a concentration that you won't find it anywhere else. And it's not to take away from any other meeting. It's not to take away from any other workshop. It's not to take away from any other convention. And I've been to a lot of them. But I have never found as strong a concentration of people who are willing to do the full deal that all of these guys just mentioned. Unity, service, and recovery. I've not found it anywhere else. And I don't share this story with a lot of folks, but I'll share it with y'all. So, and Chad's already laughing. So I showed up here in 2002. And again, I introduced myself as an alcoholic and drug addict because I'm a real alcoholic and a real drug addict. And my first workshop, one of you all found me out in the woods smoking alcoholically. Right? Yeah. Come on. And you said to me, I don't think that's a good idea. And I disagreed. I disagreed vehemently because my problem was alcohol. I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And so I carried a resentment. I carried a resentment to the next workshop. I carried a resentment to my sponsor. And I came to the next workshop, and you all still disagreed. And I finally picked up another white chip on April 1st of 2003 because of what you all did, because of what the message that you all carried to me and are still carrying to this day. And I don't think any one of these guys would say anything different. I'm a better husband, a better father, a better brother, a better friend. I'm a better church member. I'm a better employee. I'm a better employer. I'm a better all of it because of you. I don't know. I mean, it's here. It is here. And it will be here into perpetuity if I have anything to say about it, if any of us have anything to say about it. Does that help? All right.
Can I briefly do that?
Yeah.
For me, I'll give you a vision about why it's important for me to have this in my program, and to have discovered this within under a year. The program at Alcoholics Anonymous represents a new way for me to live, and I have not been able to sustain that on my own. I haven't been able to do it. So to come up here twice a year is sort of like, what happens to me is that I'm a lump of coal, and when I take myself out of the fire where all the coal is, and I set myself off to the side, what happens? So twice a year, I get to be put back into the fire, and man, my little lump of coal, just the unity that you're talking about, Chris, my lump of coal catches Bobby and Chad and Preacher and Ricky, and before I know it, that thing that you're talking about tomorrow, that's how I'm sounding right now. And when I go away from here, I remember how that feels, and I want to get back here. So when I put myself back into the cold, man, the unity and the power of what's really going on here affects me, and I catch fire. And I like the perpetuity thing. So give me a chance to help you to do that until we can't no more. So that's why for me.
Let's give these guys a round of applause one more time. Why don't we circle up and we'll close out in the usual fashion. Come on down, guys.